That's perfectly fine. But in centuries ago, the little country in Europe called the Netherlands was in war with Spain for 80 years. Imagine, war for 80 years until the Dutch finally flooded them out, which they should have thought of 50 years before that. But anyway, they flooded them out. So then what to do with the little country? Well, then France took over the country, and Napoleon said, I don't really want that little country. But one thing he did that was very important, there were, well, if you were young, and you were young, and you were young, too many youngs. So he said, so that I could know who these people are, they all have to have a last name. So if you lived by the dike, you became Jan van Dyke. And if you lived by the swamp or the bog or the fen, you became Jan Venema. And Venema is my maiden name. So he gave everybody a last name. Some chose really silly names like Slabacord, and they were stuck with it forever and ever. So anyway, what to do with this little country? So the rulers of Europe said, tell you what, we'll give them their own king and let him rule that little country. So they assigned King Willem I to rule over the people. He was Dutch. So he said, okay, I'm in charge now, and I'm going to raise taxes, and I'm going to do this, that, and the other thing, and I'm going to tell people how they have to go to church. So he says, when they get to church, I'm going to assign them a church, but then they have to sing hymns instead of psalms. It's just going from bad to worse. And this, that, and the other thing was going to happen in the church. Well, our people down in the province of Zeeland, as a province is like a state, said, no, this isn't what we want. We want to have church like Calvin and Lutherans or any of the other reformers said the church should be. So they said, we are going to separate from the church. And they started meeting in houses and in barns. And they met in Mr. Van der Leyster's big barn. Sometimes there'd be 1,000 people in that big barn. So the king says, this won't do. So he'd send his soldiers with their bayonets. And he made a rule that if there were more than 19 people in a church meeting, they had to pay a big fine. So they were really upset. What to do? So they thought and thought and thought about where there would be room, where they could have the kind of town, place, city that they would like. And that place would be America. They have all kinds of land in America. And their friend, Reverend Albertus van Rauti, had gone 6 months before, and he was telling of all the land that was available. So they decided to make plans to come. Mr. Van der Leyster started making a list, and he had 425 names on that list. And we have the list, not here, but we do have it in his handwriting. So how to get all these people here? Oh, they had to rent ships, and they had to make provisions, and they had to do all kinds of things to get ready for their journey. So now we're going to get up.